here again from Aaron's Weathering. Welcome back to another session of At the Sandpit. Today we're going to have a look at doing the part 2 of weathering the race LRC containers, and we're going to do a heavily weathered version. So we have some photos here. These ones clearly they've been in service for quite some time, and we're going to look at what they've got weathering wise on them. So straight off, we've got a lot of build up around the edges here where there's raised edges where the wind's certainly picked up and carried the dirt around it. Got a bit of rust streaking because the frame itself, if you recall, was a galvanized steel. So obviously the galvanized steel has eroded and started to rust a little bit around it. We've got some vertical streaks in there, and we've got a very dirty generator for the refrigerant as well in that regards around the radiators and panel lines. So, right, so we're going to have a go at producing this result. It's interesting to note that these have an orange tinge to it, like it's a rust. However, being a fiberglass box, the question remains is how did a fiberglass box get a rusty effect to it? One theory that I've discussed with some friends is that the brake dust and the rail dust and stuff has stuck to the fiberglass. Fiberglass being a very good conductor of static electricity, the rust may have stuck to the surface and it's oxidized on the surface, and as time goes on, it's rusted and causing that rust looking effect to it. That's just one theory, but if you've got a theory that stands to reason, by all means leave a comment down below. All right, so let me put our photos aside. Now, what I've done also here is I've added little bits of masking tape to represent what they've done here, how they've done repair patch jobs in the fiberglass. They've obviously sustained some damage and they've been patched up. So I've done that to one side. So we're going to have little white marks once we finish with the whole weathering. I've taken the liberty also to do the weathering on the generator end because I went into detail about that in my first one, the subtle weathering. So today we're just going to do the long sides, the top and the end here, and we'll have a nice finished result. So let's get right into it. So we want a flat broad brush, and we're going to start off putting the grime on, because remember this is layering up. So you're going to be putting the grime on, and then as time goes on, you're going to put the rust powder effect and layer it up that way. And we're going to get some vertical streaks in there as well. So, and as you recall, I said start from the bottom up because we're going to want to try and build up that grime line across the bottom of the container here. All right, here we go. So I'll continue doing this and we'll get to the other side and we'll move on then to the end. Okay, now what I've done is I've put a layer of grime over both sides, then I've gone through with the eraser, and as demonstrated in the first video, I've subtracted off the excess powder. So we've got a nice grimy finish to it, and we've got like a vertical stripe to the surface as well. So next we will get a pencil, and again we're going to highlight the door join. This time I'm using a burnt umber, but but, any dark colour is going to be good for highlighting that door join line. Okay, so we'll do some attention around the door now. We want to start griming up and giving a bit of a rust effect. You can see here around the hinges, the door, there's a bit of a orange haze around it, and you certainly got a lot of grime build up in the recesses of where the door latches are and the handles. So we'll go ahead and we'll put some detail to that. So, a bit of rust. Gonna put a bit of dark grey to it. And now we'll go back to my small broad and we'll get a little bit of grime out of the sandbox and just blend it. Now again, with the eraser, just gently subtract a little bit of it. And then back over the top of the hinge with a bit of the powder. But you can see that starting to, it's highlighted a bit of the bolt detail in there and the rusting effect. Now we'll get some powder grime and we'll put it inside this area here. I'll move into with a smaller brush just to get in where the door latch handles are. Okay. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to just put a little bit of powder in these recesses here, and we'll darken up again the top here. You've got a bit of, it's quite dark, there's a little bit of a rust streak coming out of these top detail points. Now, one thing we have to be conscious of, because we've got these little bits of tape on the container, we want to reduce as much as possible a halo line around where the tape is when we expose the white through. So every now and again, you can get the eraser and just wipe around the edges to just sort of keep them a bit clear. And as we build it up, we'll just keep on just trying to help subtract a little bit out of it. And anywhere that I've gone over with the eraser and I'm not happy with it, again, just a bit of powder over it, just to keep up appearances. All right, now I will move on to the other side and get that done. Okay, now I've done both sides of the doors. I'm just finalising the cleanup. Get a little bit rid of the halo That's from the powders. Another way you can help define the hinge rust is the side of a pencil and just gently rub on the raised surface. Even the bolt detail or the rivet detail, you can just highlight them as well. That's another method. Okay, so highlight that area. Get that one done. All right, so let's now have a look at doing this build up along the bottom of the container and a little bit of the edge, and start getting that slight orange hue to it. Right, so with a light orange color, introduce it to the sandbox. Let's just start as you can see already, we're starting to get that nice vertical streak finish to it. So I'm using a very light orange color, not a dark one. But we will add a little bit more to it, blend some colors through to it. So mixing up the strokes, so you got flat and then sharp, help giving you a nice subtle effect of variation in the surface. All right. Now, let's look at putting some grime around the edges. So let's blend a bit of light brown and dark brown together out of the sandbox. Just mix that up a little bit. And we will do a bit of a horizontal start to it. Just build up onto it gradually. Then we will get a round stipple brush, bit of rust, bit of brown, and just introduce it gently across the bottom. And then back to my small flat brush. And then we're going to then blend it up. I just put a little bit of black in there for now, just to help give it some definition. Then again, bringing it up vertically. we can give it a little bit of the eraser finish to it, just to give it some random streaks in the white. And then back to adding the grime across the bottom. Introduce a little bit of orange. And then a broad flat. We'll get a little bit of a concentration on the raised edge. Maybe just give it a slight circular motion, so yeah, it's not a complete streak. Again, let's introduce a little bit of the pencil, because this is actually slightly raised on this edge. Just highlight it. And then back with the powder. So as you can see, it's add, subtract, add, subtract, until you get that final result you're looking for. All right, so let's introduce a little bit of rust from the top of the framework as depicted here. So we want to do a little bit of that and just give it a little bit of a break up there. So we've got, again, burnt umber. We have burnt sienna. And then we have cadmium orange. They can be our starting points. Bit of acrylic thinners. And if you remember, let's dip a tip, a sharp tip, into it. I'm going to introduce a little bit of dark, followed by medium brown. Then with the orange. Okay, so from there, get a clean brush and just ever so slightly give it a streak to it. I can put a little bit of thinners on the brush, but you want it just slightly damp, not very like saturated. And then you can get that blended rust streak. So you've got the dark spot at the top, followed by the medium brown, then by the orange. So let's do it one more time. So your dark spot, followed by your medium brown underneath the area, finished with the light orange. And then with a clean brush that has been dipped and then dried till it's just a very light damp finish. We carefully vertically bring it down. So sometimes it doesn't work the first time. Don't panic. Again, bring it in. And you've got a rust streak there. Just add a little bit of more detail to it. All right. Get a little bit of that. All right, so I'll continue on with this and I'll finish this side, do the other side, and then we'll move on to the end of the container. Okay, now that the sides have been done on the container, I'll introduce you to another little trick of mine. What I'm going to do is we're going to scratch away some of the tampo print on the side of it to show it a little bit more like it's wear and tear in traffic. So with a sharp blade on its edge, just start scratching away at the tampo print. Give it a little bit of encouragement. And then with the powders, come back and just give them a light dusting. Just help to blend it in a little bit. Okay, here's another rusting technique I've got for you. Use a straight edge of some description and put it on the container side. I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to use the side of my eraser here and line it up. Probably best using a set square, but I'm cheating today. Now, a nice straight vertical line. That's just giving you a nice rust streak. And try and feather off some of that. Now again, with the very light damp brush, I want to introduce that, and we will then, with some powders, all right, so I'll give that a bit of a tidy up. Okay, all right. Now, we want to get a bit of contrast between the galvanized steel frame and to the fiberglass. So what I do is get a bit of black, a bit of white, make up my own little color, make up a nice flat galvanized grey. And then we're going to introduce it along the rails. And we'll go around the frame surface and give it some definition between the fiberglass and the frame. So you can see that gives it quite a bit of definition between the two types of surfaces. I'll just finish off tightening that up and then we'll move on to the end doors. Okay, now we're going to move on to the end of the container with the doors. We're going to have a look at this photo here. As we can see, there is quite a lot of build up around the door latch and the bolts and where the hinges are. So what we're going to start off with is a bit of the dark brown panel line, and we're going to accent round the door. So giving the bottle a good shake. And let's start around the door. Okay, now that we've got the door done with the panel line, we'll give it a final touch up with the powder, making sure the panel line is all dry. So we know that the door on the end, not so much of the rusty colour, but more of your rail grime that's built up over the course of its service life. So focusing in first on the corners. Then the door bolts. And then finally, a bit of grime. Remember, upward motion. And let's put a little bit more brown in for the wheel splash. And we'll just give it a light haze of the orange over it. We can add a little bit of rust along the bolts as well, since there's metal friction there. Okay, pretty happy with that. And now we'll move on to the roof. Okay, our final surface now to weather is the top of the container. Now, I haven't really got any detail photos of the top, so we're going to have to use a little bit of modeler's license with that. But we certainly know that we've got a lot of dirt and debris and soot from the exhaust that's going to be carried over the top of the surface. So I'll start with mixing up some grime and grey, and I'll start putting it on. Concentrating along the edges here. Put a little bit of the orange. And really building up that layer of grime. Okay, keep on working on that, and then we'll move to the next part. Okay, now that we've got the roof all grimed up, let's have some fun with the exhaust from the generator. So we'll get some black. We'll start by getting it in around the mesh here, then working our way onto the top. So we're going to have quite a bit of a build up around this area. Very sooty. And then we're just going to have like a smoke line taper. Just feathering it out. So it basically has a vanish point. Then with your flat broad, just accentuate it. Gives you that wind-blown soot look. Get a little bit more in line with the exhaust itself. Around the actual metal frame. And then again, just blending it in. So what could happen is that you may have, from rain, that the soot builds up and then will run along the edges. So you can use the pencil, a black pencil, just to highlight that. A little bit of black running around that gives it a bit of a sharp line, and then a bit of black and brown. The dirt builds up. Gives a bit of an impression that the soot's run with the water.